Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wrangle's Learnathon series. Today, we're going to be learning how to make a RAG system and how it all works, and we'll be going through a lot of terminologies and things. A big basis behind this Learnathon is there's a lot of mixed information around AI and how it actually works, and people using terminologies and things that they don't actually necessarily know the full meaning and all those things. And just to alleviate a lot of people's fears and confusion around these things, we set up this Learnathon that's like, an amalgamation of workshop and code along, but the main objective is that you folks have something you can take away, you have a full understanding, and it's just a big uplifting thing. We have several mentors present that are set up to help you if you have any issues while we're going along. If you have an issue, just go over to the chat window within the Google meeting and just type in help, and one of our mentors will swoop in and they'll pull you off into a breakout room to sort out any issues. If anybody has any issues with like the pulling down the repo or setting up your AI key, your Google AI key, please shoot that as early as possible so we can make sure you're set up and ready to participate fully. And if there's any feelings, emotions, concerns, throw it in the chat and we will address you as we go through, no problem. Any additional questions that maybe are relevant to Della as he's giving his presentation or anything like that, throw them in and the mentors will either attempt to answer, or if we think it's relevant for the entire group, we're going to bring it up to Della and be like, Della, talk about this now. And with that, actually, we'll just do a quick intro of some of our mentors. So Anya is going to be one of our mentors, and Jordan Finch will be another mentor that we have here. And we have a few other wranglers that are experienced. So if we end up getting overwhelmed by people having issues, we'll just be able to jump in and support. So no worries. And with that, I will hand it back over to the great Della.
Thanks, Tom. So hey everybody. Thanks for coming out. This is a very exciting topic for me. I really enjoy talking about AI. I've talked everyone's ear off about this for a long time, and now suddenly I have a captured audience. So thank you for coming. The goal overall with this series is going to be to try to together collectively kind of surf the bleeding edge of the industry as it changes and learn what's going on and figure out brass tacks, core fundamental understandings that help us scale out to more dramatic things. Because inherently, this is still very, very new, very nascent. So we all have an opportunity to be pioneers in our own way. But to get to that point, even it's a good idea for us to kind of have a shared vocabulary, shared understanding, and to learn with each other. It's not about me teaching necessarily, although I will teach. It's more about kind of a collective learning process. This is at least our philosophy. We're starting with RAG because, and I'll explain even what that means, because it's a pretty useful thing to learn. We actually started with something earlier, but I think in my mind, this is almost a refresh, focused more on this pattern that we were planning in the future. But this is a great technology to start with because I feel like it's very useful anywhere from an enterprise application to a personal project conceptually. And there's a lot of tools that are being built around this concept. So without further ado, why don't we start with just making sure everybody has access to the repo and can pull it down. And I won't go through it too much, but I'll just kind of point out what those things are. And then I'll start talking about the actual project, and I'll give you a little quick demo of what the current state is. I'll talk about concepts along the way, and then we'll spend some time all just trying to implement the code changes collectively, and we can talk about that afterwards. Okay, so let's start. So let me share my screen. You're going to see an infinite screen for a second, but don't worry, I'm going to pop over. Great. All good? Yeah, looks like you can see my screen now. So like this is the repo. I made some very last minute changes to the README. I realized it was out of date, so now it should be all up to date. Thank you again, Anya. This should basically give you an idea what the repository is, what's going on. You don't have to read the whole thing. Just nice if you're coming back to this or going to share this with a friend later on and they want to kind of try it themselves. But the whole idea essentially is that we will be using a very basic foundational application to build off of that allows us to have grounded Q&A. So let me kind of just talk about that real quick. Grounding as a concept, is a term you might hear a lot, is all about, in the context of LLMs especially, it's all about trying to connect their understanding, quote unquote, of the world with something that's more grounded than whatever's going on in their quote unquote heads, brains. I'll try my hardest to put quote unquotes around all the anthropomorphizing of this, but it's hard not to, so bear with me. Because LLMs are essentially these heavily compressed understandings of the world based off of internet technology and like the web and books, etc., their understanding isn't exactly always aligned with reality. Similar example would be like, we often forget things that have happened a long time ago. We might make a mistake, different color than we thought it was, different name. It's more dramatic for LLMs in very particular ways, but in that same vein, it's really good for us to always, if we don't know, we'll Google it and say, hey, actually, what was the name of that book? Yeah, that's what it was called. It wasn't, determining, it's determined by Rob Sapolsky, whatever it may be. So yeah, the end result is that we have the opportunity to just focus our understanding of the world with something that's structured. Now, Google has an LLM called Gemini. It's currently the latest version is 2.5. They have Pro, they have Flash, they have Flashlight. There's a lot of naming conventions that are very insane across all models. all their names are just crazy. That's gonna be very hard to keep up with. I might have a mini document written in one day, just kind of help break that down, because that alone is a challenge. But needless to say, in their latest models, including the 2.0 and 2.5, they have basically what's built in RAG. So let's talk about what RAG is real quick. RAG is Retrieval Augmented Generation. You'll see right there. And yeah, that's kind of how we describe this grounding. And the whole idea is there are all kinds of ways that we can pull in data that's more, let's say, real and grounded. We can use that real and grounded data to make sure that we're all actually keeping as close to reality as possible. So you can use the internet, you can use a database, you can use vector databases. There's tons of these other options for kind of pulling in data dynamically. But to start this off, to make it really simple, let's just start with looking at Google's implementation, which is quite straightforward. So let me jump in first by showing you the demo of the app as it is right now, showing you roughly what we're seeing, and then let me jump to the code and show you specifically more of the technologies that we're going to be using. So I had one I thought was really simple, an example. So what are the NBA playoff scores right now? So let me actually show you something very useful. Let me refresh this page, and let me. Oh, I restarted my server. That makes sense. Let me restart it. That's useful. Let me just go over here. Yeah, and just you should have a link to this, and you pull down and code along. And in there is instructions on how to get the API key. You might already have one. If not, you can do it very easily. We can also help you out with getting one if you want to go to a side room. So here we go. This is the actual app. Oh, you guys can see this too. Let me just see if I can make this thing go away. How do I make you go away?
I think you can just hit the little X.
No, little X. Okay, that works. Great. So we're over here. And yeah, okay. So let's start by actually looking at the code that is wrapping around Versel AI SDK. Now, what is Versel AI SDK real quick? I'll even show you the website real quick. Versel AI SDK is a software development kit by Versel. And the whole idea about this is that it makes it much easier for us to interact with all kinds of LLMs in very explicit, structured ways that are useful to, like, web development primarily. They have lots of really useful things. I want to do a whole class on their structured object generation and their tool calling mechanisms and their agent, implementations and the telemetry, and there's tons of things you can do, especially with image generation and speech. They're really building and adding to this. But today we're gonna start with the most basic thing and just generate some text, which is the generate text over here. And you can come to an example over here of how they do that. And you can see, yeah, with Google, we just use this. So they have access to so many of these different models, and everything in their SDK makes it very easy for you to just kind of pop in the model you want, so swap it out, and even dynamically swap it out with some of their tooling, so that you can very easily switch between models, even on runtime. So you can make your custom, like providers, they're called, to make it so that something that they don't support can be supported as long as you follow and adhere to their API. So very, very useful, awesome thing to use, and we're using it right inside of our LLMTS. Let me make it a little bigger. Let me close things that are unnecessary right now. There we go. Nice and clean and tight. There we go. Yeah, I don't think I need you right now when I close you too. So there's tons of things in here that are like, useful or relevant, yada, yada. But the most useful thing here is the generate answer function over here. This basically does the lion's share of work. Not very long. It's like, what is it? 50 lines of text. Nice space as well too. Some validation and handling of that. But the most important thing is right over here. And we're actually using an older one. When we started this repo, it was 2.0 was the latest one. We can do 2.5 Flash now if we want to. And in fact, this thing's pretty useful. It'll give you, if you go into the typing, they'll tell you what it supports. I always do it this way, which is, I think, maybe a little bit extra. But this is the actual typing of things. You can go here and see, great, here's everything they support. I think so. I need to update the version because I still have an older one, but it's completely fine for our use cases, 2.0. If you want to update that to a later version, I'll show you that real quick. Go to package. You need to go into over here, the SDK kit. You'll see, hover over it. The latest version is 1.217. You know what? I'll just do it right now. Nice and easy, just so I can show you 2.5, so I like it better. But I'll start with just Flash, PNPMI, do your thing. I also like using PNPM. I don't even know when I switched over from NPM. I used to be just focused on that, but it's just better. It handles dependencies much easier. Okay, great. So we have that in there now. And if we go back into this, I wonder if actually, well, I think actually I need to. You're fine. Right? Yeah, it's still the same thing. It's just lying. Regardless, you'll see over here, very simple. We call the model, use grounding, true, and this is really it. So this is a specific thing with Google's API. Not all the models have this. Maybe they will in the future. I think Anthropic will probably have them soon, as they just recently added the ability to tie into web connections. But fundamentally, the whole idea is that when you have use grounding true, we get grounded information in our application. If I switch to false, and let's go to our app. Let's give it a refresh. Let's hope I didn't break it. I don't think I did. Hooray. And I'll say, what is the current NBA score? Sure. What is the current state of the NBA playoffs? It doesn't really have very much information. I'll even lie. This is a great example. It's like, I don't know, conference finals? What's going on? Who knows? Not correct. We are down the playoffs. Well, actually, no, we're not in the finals. We're in the semifinals. No, quarterfinals. We're one before the conference finals, I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. I can't remember where we are right now. I haven't been watching Versel this year. Regardless, it doesn't know what's talking about. But if I switch it to true, you will see a completely different answer. I think this will even just work on runtime. Refresh necessary. Great. And now suddenly you see 2025 NBA playoffs are currently in the second round. Here's the quick list of the series standings of May 8. You see that. You'll see this. Different conferences. Great. Yeah, you can see exactly here what's going on in Eastern Western Conference. You see the information. Very useful stuff. But more important, you see this. So this comes in with Google's grounding data. And this is a great example of sort of like RAG data that you'd get. You get this in different ways depending on the application you're using and the RAG system you have. But the core concept is the same. You'll get something like grounding chunks, which tells you specifically where the actual data is coming from. These are all using Vertex AI search. Vertex is Google Cloud's behind the scenes like AI specific like cloud kits, let's call it. And you'll see kind of the actual title of the sites here, and you can click on this. It'll take you right to them. So if I take this URL, let me just do this whole thing. Oh no. This is where I got that information from. Very useful. And yeah, this is grounding. This is grounding based off of the internet, which is very, very useful. A lot of grounding is usually off of like internal data or like, some kind of database or what may be. But internet grounding is also very useful depending on the application you're building. If you want, for example, to have something that tells you the basketball scores, because LLMs are in a frozen state when they're kind of done being built, they don't really have like an up-to-date understanding of the world. They don't know what happened yesterday. They know what happened when the data cutoff is, and usually each LLM has their own. You can also ask them, and they'll tell you, what is your data cutoff? I don't know if they'll know. No, it doesn't know. Usually it's in the system prompt of like a chat. If you talk to a chat, it'll tell you more. Regardless, this one I think is like January of this year for at least a 2.5 model. So not up to date for the NBA playoffs, but it can connect to the internet and it can get the data for you. So let's look at the data over here, the structure. So you'll see the query I sent. You will see like this nice rendered element that's basically just a visualization of sort of this. So Google, oopsie daisy, Google is suggesting, and I lost that, of course. I hate the two-finger backswipe, by the way, with MacBooks, and I always forget to turn off. What is the current NBA standing? So it's less of a nice answer. It wasn't as clear, but you can see the same thing here. You see the actual links, and this is for the grounding chunk. You see the search entry is a little like visualization. It's actually styled that Google suggests for you. And then you have the grounding supports over here. So the grounding supports will tell you certain parts of the actual text, starting and ending index. So if you don't see start index, it means 0. End index is 158. So it's saying literally at the text snippet it gave you at character 158, highlight all of that if you like. It even shows you the text itself, and it tells you where it got that information. So grounding chunks indices 0 and 1 means 0 and 1 is what powers that information. For 2 and 3, you have 2 and 3. So depending on how you ask the question, you'll get different results. Also very true for any kind of like RAG grounding, but let me see more clear. Show me the scores per conference of the current NBA playoffs. They're probably getting more up to date. Yeah, better structure, more like what I had before. As of May 8, breakdown, hooray, and you get, again, that information same way as before, telling you the segment specifically, hey, for this text, game 1, Pacers, 121 to 112 Cavalier, grounding index is 0, grounding index is over here, 0, Sportsnet.ca. Very fair place to get this. So yeah, overall, you can work with this and you can play with this to kind of give you that structure. But the question from here is, how do I best present this information to a user in a way that is valuable and applicable to the use case I'm kind of presenting here? This question, I think, is dependent upon what you're trying to build. And we have a lot of opportunities here, specifically as developers, especially web developers, to allow our own design sensibilities and understanding of good UI UX to come to play. So this is where I recommend everybody trying to get familiarized with this, set this up themselves, play around with things. If they want to update the version of the Versel AI SDK to latest Gemini, I'm going to do it right now myself, so you can see me code along and kind of make sure everything's up to date in that regard. But yeah, overall, this is where I would suggest everybody kind of just go and do their own thing. In the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And I'll try not to talk too much, but I will be talking in the background as you're working. This is going to be code along, so I will be kind of doing my own thing here. But the one caveat is that I want to kind of show off another thing. This is my own personal desire, is that I really want to highlight how to use tools like Cursor, which is what I'm using right now here, to really help us in the best possible way, handle this stuff quickly and easily and give us a faster feedback loop. I think that's my own personal goal and desire, is that I really want to make sure everybody here is increasingly familiar with these tools as they become increasingly integral to our processes. I don't think Cursor is going away. I don't think it's going to be, I think we'll still do this for a long time. So feel free at this point, if you have any questions, to ask before we kind of do our breakouts. But this is roughly where we can all try to go in and do our own thing.
Yeah, and just to kind of support Della's last statement, I think like one of the biggest things that we're trying to focus on with empowering people with AI is like empowering the individual, right? It's like we have a lot of things that are demanding on us, and there are ways that new ways, cutting edge ways that we can really have some relief on some folks as far as like how much demand is being placed on them and things like that. Yes, Stephanie.
Yes, thank you, Della, for this. It's great. I have some curiosity and questions related to the tool that we are using, because in this project, we're using Versel SDK for AI, and also we're using Google grounding. You know that you show us that option to have use grounding true. Is that to say that if I use other model, I cannot use this option? It's very specific to Google?
Yes, exactly. The use search grounding is very specific to Google. If you go to Versel's AI SDK, they'll kind of tell you more if you go into the provider section over here. So if you go into providers, you'll see all of the providers they support over here on the side. You can see Google Generative AI, and then you'll see search grounding. And so this is specific to them. Other providers also have things that are specific to them as well, that are not all models supported. A great example is image generation. Although more models are supporting that. Right now, it's only really Google and OpenAI. Anthropic doesn't support it. Cohere, Mistral, DeepSeek, whatever. They have no image generation. Even some of them don't have image recognition and understanding. So while the SDK is kind of shared across the board, if some models don't have support for certain features, you'll see that it doesn't work. Nothing happens when you do them. And the typing is actually updated. So for example, this is why the use search grounding is inside of the Google specific provider logic over here, because things like that are tied to the provider, not tied to the generation of text. So they try to segment those two things out so that things kind of work no matter what. So if I switch this out to something else and I don't turn use search grounding, everything else that works the same, it might not just be as good.
That's great. Thank you.
Cool. Okay, so let me see if I can get, I don't know why this typing is wrong, but it's not a big deal. Things are still working. Let me get 2.5 running. I go to providers, Google, Gemini 2.5. I'll say Flash, I don't need Pro. I click here. One of the most important things is finding the names of all these models. There we go. These names are pretty universal across the board. So if you use something like this right there and put it here, it should work. Give that a save. Okay, the errors there. Let's go here. And let me just literally copy this. Give it a refresh just to be safe. Paste this in and ask. Cool. Works just fine. So you'll see even with this grounding system that we'll have multiple queries here. So if no more questions, I'll just start like using Cursor. So if you're actually curious about how that works and how I might use this in my own process, feel free to look at this. And I'll, you can kind of like ask questions throughout, jump in. But if you want to try yourself, feel free. And maybe at the end we kind of show off different ways that we've decided to kind of like visualize this information. So here's what I do. I like to go inside of here in my cursor. I have to give it context in general. What I'll do is I'll say, I am using data that is grounded to show a simple Q&A app. That's better. I want to better integrate the visualizations of this data into my application. Here is a snippet of the kind of data we get back. I render this as raw JSON for now inside of my page. So I'm doing right, page DSX. Should be right below everything. Yeah, grounding. But I want to instead have a better integration directly into the text I show with appropriate links and highlights and notations. So I'll often give it general idea what I want. I'll give it info on the files that I'm touching. I can see how it thinks. I love to see how it thinks. Although, quick note, research is showing that their thinking tokens over here that you see aren't necessarily one-to-one mapped to what it's quote-unquote thinking under the hood. Very interesting research out of Anthropic. But it does still give you a good idea as to roughly sort of the process of how it's reasoning, quote-unquote, through the questions you're asking. Reasoning models are all quite new. I think the first one really was available. When did O1 come out? It came out like October of last year or so. And since then, we had a couple of small bumps, and now more and more systems are using it. You'll see often this planning next moves, brain thinking structure, and more of these tools. And this is the reason tokens, which are separate from the final tokens. Reason tokens are really more about making this model think for longer. So it just kind of writes. It's almost like writing in a notebook to help get all your thoughts kind of oriented, even if it's just a brain dump. So I thought for 58 seconds, a nice long time. And if I go in here, you can kind of see, the process. Okay, great. I need to understand the structure. I need to identify the relevant data. I need to look at this is what it is. This is the rendered content. This HTML content seems to be a pre-rendered visualization of search queries. Should be displayed directly. Great. Grounded chunks provides URIs and titles for web sources. These can be used to create links. Cool. Grounding supports. Connect segments of the answer text to specific grounding chunks. Yeah, you see it understands what's going on here. You have to modify the app, so it's going to go in here and make the changes directly inside of here. Tells you what it's going to do. You'll see it even thinks in code. This is really nice. This is more, I make this up mostly because this is a really good example of good UX. And this is all very new. This is a couple months old that they started to do this kind of stuff. Because before, you just see a straight text, dump of the grounding tokens. And it wasn't really useful. But now you can even see in grounding tokens the markup of kind of how it's thinking about the code. And a nice UI UX kind of collapsed, but you can expand and go through. And I think this integration, this tooling has been very, very useful for my own sense of peace of mind. It's like its own grounding for me. So I can see how it's reasoning through things, how it's thinking about things, and I can kind of intersperse and say, hey, I see you thought X or Y, not what I want to do. I want to do this instead. Same way with a person, you might say something to them, they might misunderstand what you want, and they might go down a path that's not great. So it's doing its whole thing. It thought for quite a long time. It'll just I don't have the time to read through all of this, but I would recommend anybody who is actually using this sit down and spend the time reading through what it gives you. It's the most useful thing when working with these tools. It can be very tempting to sort of just jump ahead, but honestly, I really do feel like the value is, unless you're just what's it called, vibe coding, and you're just whatever, I don't care what happens. The value really is in it's complaining because it's trying to fix this problem for me. It's why are these complaining? So you can see over here, it's trying to add them. It should be in place. You're right. It should be. It just isn't. My editor is complaining about this for me. That happens all the time. That's fine. My computer's just getting along the tooth. And it'll add the types. It'll add the information. It's like really trying its best to give you higher quality content and also copy the structure and patterns that are already in your code. So I recommend if you don't like a pattern, you want to make sure that it follows a particular paradigm, either give it an additional prompt in advance saying, this is kind of what I want, put it inside of the system prompts, or just literally tell it. Be like, I don't like these things. Can you do this instead? And it'll be pretty good at keeping up. I do use the 2.5 Pro, which has an additional cost outside of the subscription. It's something like 5 cents a query almost. Not a crazy amount, but not a cheap amount. If you're working all day and you do 100 queries, there you go. That's 5,000 cents. No, 500 cents. So $5. So not the cheapest, not the most expensive, but up to you to decide whether or not you want to spend $5 a day if you're going crazy on this kind of pro stuff. And the non-pro stuff is just about as good. You'll just see often with pro, it thinks longer, which will give you slightly better results, but also up the cost a bit more. So you can see at the very end, I like to have a little conclusion about the files change. I can jump through and I can accept them individually. Before I accept, I can just kind of look and see how it looks. Let's kind of refresh. And let's see. Same question as before. No, you don't have that. What is the current NBA playoff standings for all teams? Division conference. Cool. And you'll see this is the search insights that came in directly from Google. So this is that little snippet it gives you, which you can, this is how it wants to be rendered. You don't have to do that if you want. You can put it any way you want to, but it created little search insight sections specifically for the HTML. You can click on this and it'll take me there. Yeah, I should tell to new tab that for me because now I have to do this again. What is the current NBA standings for? I remember that's a note for all the teams in the playoffs conferences. Try this again. Great. Same thing. You can kind of click on that and go through if you like. You'll see it also highlights them for you over here, and it's doing a little like popover, little question mark. I think this is a pretty good way to do it. I do like this pattern for like things like this. You can see this information if you want to see exactly how it's searched. But I often iterate with this very quickly because I can. So I can be like, you know what, I like some of the stuff. I don't like some of it. For example, I don't like the UI for this popover over here. I kind of like this, but I want to be the bottom, and I want the links to all 2 new tabs. So let me tell it that. I'll say, I'll accept what you have so far, but okay, some notes. 1, make links into new tabs. 2, I want the grounding in metadata all at the bottom in a, yeah, let's say below the response. 3, the highlight yellow is too aggressive. And 4, I want to use a ShadCN popover element for the hover. That's pretty good enough. And I'll just say, make sure yeah, that's fine. Make sure to use PNPM to install. And I'll get a picture to get an idea of what it looks like so it can have the best possible understanding of how to critique this. Yeah.
Well, we won't be able to go in depth, but the new feature of actually being able to add an image and it being able to actually process the text and everything on that image appropriately is crazy. And I'm fascinated to know how it's actually doing that at this point.
So you can see this process over here. I even let it go in and add Shatsian popover. By the way, it changed from UI latest to just Shatsian latest, but it still works. It's like, cool, it knows that, but it's good that it still works, so I'll just keep going. It's creating its own graphic display component, and it's integrating it in for me, which I do like. I do like the fact that it increasingly the models are having better patterns, but you can also kind of encourage them to have better patterns. So feel free to do so if you don't like what it's doing. Let's get this guy refresh. I need to restart my actual app. Yeah. Yeah, we don't really have a lot of time more than this, so I want to spend some time after this just kind of talking about this. I think I need to just include this. I'll just copy this and show it. I'll just say, hey, I'm getting this error. I know how to solve the problem, and it's not too hard. You got to just literally install this. But I like to also see how it reasons about and solves issues. I can literally just copy and paste code. And it's a harder problem. This is a very useful thing to do, useful pattern. And it's like, hey, it looks like this thing requires a dependency on this. So why don't we include it? It's adding it in. Let's get this refresh. Cool, awesome. Our current NBA standings for the teams in /conferences. Cool. So change the harsh yellow to something I like a little more. Popover is there, but it's transparent, which I'll tell it to solve, whatever. But you can see it's using the actual popover. It's on click, so you can see the insights there and the links. It should be a new tab, right? Exactly what I wanted. And everything's below. So you follow my instructions and it did everything correct. I'm like, great. The popover is transparent, though. Could you also, with a decent fallback, put an iframe of the site it is referencing in the popover? Cool. But yeah, that's basically it. Any questions while it works? Any thoughts? Any feelings? We have a little bit more time, and we can do more things together. But I also want people to kind of share their thoughts and feelings and to express questions. Raise your hand.
Paul?
Hi all, nice to meet you all. Sorry for being a little late, but I did clone the repo and did my homework. I just wanted to echo something Thomas said with a slight anecdote. I was working with an LLM earlier on image recognition, and I was casually snipping things on my screen and sending it over, and it was commenting, hang on, you've done it. You've whatever problem I was working on, I send you my UI pictures, and you're saying, yeah, it's kind of nice. I don't like the green, I didn't like the green stuff around the buttons, but it is quite breathtaking now, its ability to take snipped images and not just scrape the text, but comment on the overall aesthetic and things like that. Just wanted to give you that small anecdote.
I would piggyback off of that and really kind of emphasize that this is a very, very useful thing to put into your own processes. Think about how we work. We when we're working, imagine we couldn't see our rendered output. We just wrote code and we had no idea what it looked like. It might not look great. So it's really useful to kind of have that as part of the loop back in. And as the taste of these models improves, and they're explicitly working on that, these models are all the big providers, you'll hear Google talk about this very recently with their latest versions of 2.5, are all just trying to make it so, I think web development is really a huge focus. Make it so that the visualizations are better, they use better components, more up to date, and that they have a better design sense and taste. Mind you, still won't be as good as I think a really good developer or even like an okay designer. But if you're neither of those things, it can be a really great, helpful tool, especially if you kind of put in that loop. And I think in time, you'll see that loop be more tightly integrated into the process with that hand-holding. Like I do have to paste this in, but there's already some tools, and I won't go into it right now, but MCPs that like will use things like Puppeteer and other models to actually open up the websites, go in, take a screenshot capture of the page, and then feed it back into its process. And I think that'll be increasingly tightly integrated. So we won't have to do it manually. But for now, copy, paste, multiple images, snippets here and there, annotations, even literally mark them up sometimes if you feel really explicit, and it could all really help the output.
That's really cool. And just an additional follow-up before I ask you, Stephanie. This Learnathon is a series, and if there's anything anybody is interested and would like us to address, please, we're going to send a form, a feedback form after this. Please throw it in, and we will strive to accommodate whatever people are super interested in learning about. That would be absolutely great. Stephanie.
Oh, just a quick question, because I noticed that with Cursor, you don't need to accept it, but you can see the changes right away. So what's the difference between accept it and not accept it?
That's a very good question. When you accept it, you're telling it essentially that the changes that it made are good. When you don't accept it, you'll actually have a different view available to you. I wish I could go back in time and show you. It gets kind of wonky if I try to Command Z it, but you'll see the diffs in line next to each other. So let me just add one more change so you can kind of see it. A quick and easy one.
So like a merge conflict kind of a thing?
Yes, exactly. So I'll say, okay, great. Let's say awesome. I'll just paste this. Not a huge fan of this, but I like the general UI feel. Can you make it better? Be thoughtful, creative, sure. And I also try to experiment a lot with what I tell it to do and try to remember what the output I get is. If I just say do it thing, it's different than I say do a thing creatively or do it thoughtfully or take your time. It gives you like significantly, not a hugely significant, but a significant difference in your output. How you communicate to these models is really important. Regardless, let's see it write code so I can kind of show you like what ends up happening when you don't accept versus accept. You get the opportunity to basically step through all the changes yourself, see what you like, make changes even there and edit them, again, like a kind of any kind of code compare tool, and say, I actually think you should be doing this instead of that, and I don't like this, and then you accept all those things. Once that's accepted, it's no longer differable and comparable, and yeah, let's go in here. You'll see, you can see yes or no. It's like, I don't want this. I don't want to accept this at all. So you have the ability to per line say, I like this or don't like it. This is very useful if it gives you things like, I don't know, styling differences in components or class names in different ones. It says, I actually don't want this to be width full, so I don't accept that change. But you can also just say accept the whole thing, or you can step through like this, and it'll jump from file to file with multiple files as well. And you can also see over here at the very bottom, any kind of like changes is made grouped with annotations. So import modifications, minor styling, UI design, all in the same file here. But if you have multiple files with touching, you see all of them there separately as well too. And this is the thing, the separate thing I added is it's in the beta, but it's a good like summary of the final things. And you can just accept all for a particular file per line if you want this way too. And then you can say reject, and it'll undo it. So you can say accept a whole bunch you like, and then say reject the rest any way you like. But
all right, I'm gonna stop you for a second, Della. We got a question up, so please.
Cool. Question?
Yeah, hand up. You can ask your question.
Hey, hi there. Thank you for hosting this Learnathon. It's really helpful. My question was, is it possible to create complex multi-agentic workflows with the Versal? The kind of workflows you would build with LangGraph, for example?
Very good question. I will say that Versel AI SDK didn't have a lot of agent-specific tooling until very recently, but it's increasingly able to do so. So you don't have the nice things like LangGraph has a really great like UI, UX experience. That's a WYSIWYG almost for creating these flows. So you don't really have that. But you can make increasingly complex agent workflows. So I think they have some examples in the cookbooks, potentially. Let's see, agent. Yeah, let's look at this one over here. So they're using MCP tools and stuff like that for a human loop agent. But like they do actually have, if you go into the docs, Agents, they do have information about here. Even things like single-step LLM generation, tool usage, multi-agent systems. So these are all like patterns that they're working towards, and they do give you some examples inside of here, and you have quite a bit of opportunity to do it yourself. You can see some examples in this right here. So it's possible, and they give you some examples, but it's not as mature as LangGraph is in that respect specifically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's I had a lot of trouble. I built a Python LangGraph agent, but having like that agent communicate with the Next.js front end was a nightmare.
Yes.
I used the LangGraph SDK. That made it a little bit easier, but the kind of like generative UI functionality that you get from Versel is unparalleled.
Yeah.
So I wish that was more easier.
I feel a lot of the pain you're describing sincerely. I mean, I started working with this stuff with LangChain because that was the only thing that was around like a year and a half ago for integrating AI LLMs into your development processes. And it's I moved towards Versel AI SDK because I feel like Versel AI SDK learned a lot of lessons from LangChain, LangGraph, and started from scratch in a different way that I do really appreciate. So, and it's very much focused on good integration into Next.js. If you want Next.js integration, this is probably the best way to do so because they're aware of Next.js as like, structures. They build things like the hooks oriented around passing data between the backend and the front end, sharing states across like, different locations. Much, much better at Next.js integration.
Thank you. I will try this. And I think you mentioned this in the beginning that this can scale up to even like an enterprise level application. So I know we are using Next.js server and a client. So theoretically, it should scale. We are not doing like crazy things on the front end, but I just wanted to hear more about it.
Yeah, totally. Of course. I mean, there's lots of things that you need to consider and think about when it comes to scaling an application to an enterprise app. I think a big part of it, of course, is the framework using, like Next.js. A lot of it is also tied to, in my mind, telemetry and like tooling. We're working something inside of Rangle specifically for handling like enterprise observation of your tooling and being able to integrate and interact with things. So like turning off like flows or creating default values or changing prompts, yada, yada, yada. We have this with something called Airbender. So I think Airbender is a good example of our own example of trying to do this, and we'll probably have a class where we talk about this more in the future. But I think there's tons of other tools that are oriented around helping you scale up that are pretty compatible with AI SDKs, structures and patterns. Like even if you don't have Versel AI SDK, a Versel Next.js application on deployment, it's very agnostic to that. For a good example is that I use something called, I'm forgetting the name of everything I use, all my tools. It'll come to me in a second. It's a tool for background processing in API asynchronously. This is a big challenge I have with Versel AI SDK is that their like APIs often have a timeout, and some of the longer thinking things I do or the longer chain of processes I do because it's using an LLM that's asynchronous can go for longer than a timeout or be like uncomfortably close. So I use, give me a second, I'm gonna look it up real quick, but I use a tool to help with that specifically. And I think that if you use these tools to help you like scale in different ways, Versel is very compatible with them.
Got it. Yeah. That's true, right? You can use other tools to extend the functionality.
Yeah. What's it called? Oh, so it's going to drive me crazy now until I remember this.
Is it Celery?
No. Celery is close though. It's all about asynchronous calling of functions.
Yeah, it'll come back.
Yeah.
Well,
It's okay.
Yeah. Any more questions?
No, that's it. Thank you.
No worries. No worries. Anybody else have any questions or any thoughts you want to share?
So you were asking me or to the class?
The whole
just
class.
everybody.
Yeah.
Thoughts, emotions, concerns, regrets.
By the way, this thing worked. Not for this one. This is the unfortunate thing about iframes. Some of them just don't let you iframe some sites, but when it works, it's so cool. I had one work earlier. Well, there you go. This one has 2. Wikipedia right in there. So this is a nice thing about this kind of like experimentation. That would have normally taken me like maybe like 20 minutes of trying things out before like, how do I do iframes again? How do I integrate it in here? All this work that I'm like, you know what, not worth it even me spending time on that. But now I can. It takes me a second. I'll just say, what would that look like? And then I can always undo if I don't like it. So this is one big thing I really do enjoy about like the general opportunities that you have with something like AI development, is that you can experiment much faster, have faster and tighter feedback loops, and you don't have to worry so much about like, I don't know, wasting time. You know, you can use the time that you would normally have used fixing your own bugs instead exploring and experimenting, which I really do think is the nicest, one of the nicer things about this. Hold on.
Just one quick thing as we're coming up on the hour. We do go to 1:30, but anybody that is just like taking their lunch break or anything like that, I just wanted to flag that after this, there will be a thing sent out to everybody's email that will be a recording of this, so people could break down and stuff. All of the links. It will also be a feedback survey, and we're building this and growing this with you fine people, and would love to hear what you want to add to it. Next month, we'll also be having an open office hours. If anybody wants to come, and we'll like probably use this as like a kind of guiding of like, hey, this is the thing we worked on, if anybody has questions. But truly, if anybody has any questions or insights they want to bring, it's going to be very casual, very open. It's an office hours, and we'll have plenty of our experts there to share our love and interest on all of the things.
And I figured out what it was called. Trigger.dev. Huge fan of it. Works really good. It's like Cloud Functions, but much more oriented around long-running tasks, concurrency, like applying this async workflow. That reminds me a lot of RxJS, if you've ever worked with it. At least my mentality with it is very similar to that. And I really, really do enjoy that. So I would honestly recommend it. You can try it for free. You can do self-hosting, I'm pretty sure, and you can also use their own hosted systems. And because it's such a, you can do long-running tasks and cron jobs, oh, so amazing. And I think even webhooks are a big part of their processes, I think. So you have a lot of like really cool, and the concurrency is really great. You have really cool options with this, basically.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Cool. I think, oh, sorry.
I was going to say, I appreciate the invitation. I have to run at 1 o'clock, but that's super interesting, guys. I must admit, I feel a bit like an imposter in the room because I'm a product guy, but I work very closely with my engineering people. So I'm, the lines are getting very blurred here, right? So
yeah,
this is super interesting. And I'm looking for opportunities, for me as a product person to upskill. So this is great. I'm glad I made it. So often I try to attend these things and then stuff happens and I never get here. So
I'm glad you came out, honestly and sincerely. As a product person, you actually have a lot of power in this upcoming world, in my mind.
Yes.
There's a lot of things that you can do to augment yourself to integrate better into developer workflows and cycles. One example, I think, is if you haven't tried them out yet, try out these like really simple, like one-shot app development tools. Like you can try to like Lovable.
Lovable and Bolt are two things that I've been looking at. They're bringing product guys into that space, so it's an exciting time.
Yeah, you can literally create prototypes that are working code and then just literally pop it out as GitHub for your developers to kind of work off if you like.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Basically, we can move fast, we can move coherently and quickly, and not go through these big long cycles of work. So great.
Cool.
Thank you. I'm gonna have to go. 1 o'clock is here, so appreciate it. See you next time, and I'll look out for the feedback form.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Cheers.
I have to go. Thank you very much. And I may take you up on your offer to pester you. There's a lot of things very interesting. If that's okay, you should be careful what you wish for. But
I will talk about AI for the rest of my life nonstop. So feel free.
Fantastic.
Yeah. When we're on a call on this stuff, we have to like have a hard out, or else we will just talk. Yeah.
And it is an exciting time. I agree. Thank you very much. Hope to talk to you again.
Thanks all.